England 1, Serbia 0. England's campaign at the Euros is off to a winning start. But this picture has got a lot of people divided. Has the Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment already failed? We'll talk about that and a lot more. But make sure you subscribe to the channel for more England content over the Euros. Thank you so much for all the support so far on the videos. We're going to go through last night. We're going to break it all down. The key performances, what went well, what didn't go so well. And we're going to talk about Trent. We're also going to talk about Phil Foden. I think that might be a good place to start because there's been a lot of chat about Foden. He was poor last night. Is it working on the left-hand side for Phil Foden? I'm not quite sure yet. But last night, he got into a lot of good areas, centrally, where he wants to operate, and just couldn't make it work. He couldn't make it work. No goals, no assists, no shots, no successful dribbles, and no accurate crosses in 90 minutes. And he was upstaged by a man who, by so many, has been written off in the last few months. I say written off, that might be a little bit far, but he's coming for a hell of a lot of criticism, and that is Jude Bellingham. This guy, man, this guy is him. In the video we put out last week, talking about why I thought Trent Alexander-Arnold would be really key for England, we highlighted this. We'll come back onto Trent in a little bit, and this, because there has been a debate about whether he should play midfield for the next game. But Bellingham's goal, on the edge of the box, he's untracked, but he wants to get in there. Look at him, hand up on the edge of the box. He knows exactly where he wants to end up, and that's where he ends up. In that video last week, we highlighted it. We talked about Bellingham's run to the back post. I said he'd score goals for England this tournament. I said he'd score headed goals, and that's exactly what he did yesterday. But Bellingham showed Foden up a little bit. And I think there's this willingness to almost protect Phil Foden a little bit. I've been in the Phil Foden sympathiser camp because I think he's the best player in the Premier League. He's absolutely superb. But Cesc Fabregas was right last night. He said that there shouldn't be this level of excuse for someone with that amount of quality and to say that he's out of position. And I get why Mika Richards wanted to defend him. But you look at how someone like Bukayo Saka, who got that assist for Jude Bellingham last night, has taken to international football and carried his club form into that. Declan Rice, Harry Kane, even players like Anthony Gordon, who impressed really well in that first game. And I don't want to beat down Foden because I still think he's got such a big part to play in this tournament. I think he will start, and I think he should start in the next game against Denmark because, again, you can't just give up on it. You can't just give up on Phil Foden. We've got Alan Watson in there. This was something I was playing around a little bit with before. We'll come back to that because I think if you don't like the idea of Trent in midfield, I think there's a good way to almost make it work a little bit better, potentially. But we'll come back to that. What should we talk about next? Let's talk about Trent. Look, Trent last night, I thought had a decent game. I don't think he was anywhere near as bad as what people were saying. I think people are already saying that this experiment has failed. It's not going to work. He's not a natural midfielder. Yes, I get that. And this is the big problem. Why? Because Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you look at Kyle Walker here, that is what Trent's view of the pitch is used to looking like. He's used to looking forward and sideways. The game is ahead of him and it's to his side. Everything's in front of him. Everything in front of him he can have a good look at. He's got his back to goal here and he's vulnerable and exposed, and that's not a position that he's used to being in. To be fair, I think there's a great argument to say that in another world, Trent Alexander-Arnold just whips that pass around first time to Kyle Walker because he's got the ability to do it. I think he just gets caught and it's a poor touch. And he's not even being pressed that much. He's not got too much pressure on him. Which is why I think he'll be a little bit disappointed. But that is an issue. That is an issue. And I think this is what you're going to find with someone who's not used to playing in midfield. Because I think if that's Adam Wharton in there, and despite Adam Wharton's age, the level of composure that he's got for someone so young, I think Wharton just holds onto that ball a little bit better because he's got that experience with his back to goal, with teammates swarming him. And this is why, or with opponents swarming him, sorry. And that's why this Denmark game, I think, is going to be interesting. I think he'll stick with Trent, and I think he should, because I don't think he should give up on it straight away. That Gallagher sub, I think, is going to be something that's going to be used frequently throughout the tournament, and I think could eventually end up with Gallagher starting in there, which I'm not a huge fan of. I think Gallagher's okay if you want to close out the game. I think he does give you those legs as well. I didn't particularly like Gallagher's performance when he came on. I actually think he left Rice almost a bit as equally as exposed as Trent did. But if you look at Denmark here, their draw against Slovenia yesterday, their average positions, that is a very compact midfield with Eriksen there as that number 10, who wants to get about the pitch and press high. Højbjerg, who wants to get about the pitch and press high. Hjulmand, who wants to get about the pitch and press high. Højlund, who wants to press high. and Wind as well, who wants to press high. Very compact shape in there with 5 players who will be snapping at the heels of Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think if he makes one more mistake like this, there will be questions. There will be questions. But I thought there were positives to Trent's performance as well, because I don't think we should be negative. I think we should talk about the positives that we saw as well. 91% pass actually was very tidy in there. 60 touches, got on the ball a lot. Didn't hide away from wanting to receive it, which was good. 5 out of 7 long balls completed. Had 3 shots, which we'll talk about in a second, because I think there's something interesting in that. 2 ground duels, 1 and 2 interceptions. There was one where he made a really good interception, which set England on the break. And I think it was where in the first half where Foden just didn't gamble at the back post. I think it could have been 2-0. Let's go to this then. We've talked about Trent's frailties maybe defensively. We've talked about Bellingham's goal. Let's talk about Trent here in this position, because he gets the shot off here, which goes straight down the keeper's throat, if you remember rightly. But in the video I did last week, talking about why I think Trent in midfield could really work, is because he likes picking the ball up in these positions. If Serbia aren't quite as compact there, if they want to come out a little bit more and leave a little bit more space in behind, you've got Bellingham there, you've got Kane at the back post, and I talked about in that video last week, Trent wanting to find Bellingham making that run, like Bellingham's done here for the goal, into the box. And I did think that Trent-Bellingham relationship, when you've got one of the best early crosses of the ball and one of the best box-crashing number 10s in the world, could be really fruitful for England. But obviously, they're compact, they're key, they're aware of those runners in Bellingham and Kane, so they allow Trent to have the shot, which, again, in itself could be equally as dangerous, because Trent has got so much quality. He fizzes it straight down the throat of the goalkeeper. But if it's to either side of him, he could have been in trouble. Let's talk about Harry Kane, because Harry Kane had a very quiet game last night. 2 touches in the first half, his fewest in the first half of any start for England in a competitive match. Now, I feel like if you're Harry Kane, you almost can't win a little bit, really, because there are so many people that have been so sick of Kane dropping so deep for England, and how it may be, you want him in and around the box. You want him to be there when the chance comes. That's exactly what Kane did last night. That's exactly what Kane did, because if we go forward to here, Bowen comes on, straight away that spark creates that chance, and Kane's there, and it's a great save. If Kane scores that, and it doesn't hit the bar, then I think a lot of people will say, well, actually, we got what we wanted from Kane. We don't want him dropping deep, getting into the spaces where Bellingham is going to want to occupy. We saw how congested it got against Iceland when Foden and Palmer were in there, both wanting to play there. I think Kane being that focal point was actually really key for England in that second half, especially. He didn't have too many touches, wasn't really involved, but I think there was a lot of times in that second half. Let's take Wharton off, because I'll come back to that. Let's put everyone back in their position. There was a lot of times in that second half where, to relieve pressure, Pickford did this. He went long a lot. And there was a few times where Kane really was able to bring it down and play. There was a couple of times where he did that really well and relieved pressure. England were direct, and it worked. It didn't necessarily allow us to create. But I think this is where there's a bit of a problem around Phil Foden. If England are going to do that, and I think that's why this substitution in the second half of games is something I was disappointed that we didn't see last night. And I think it's something that we might end up seeing later in the tournament, because if you think for Spurs, for example, and for England, Kane has obviously dropped deep and allowed people to run beyond him. If you've got Kane there for Bellingham to bounce off and you go long to Kane, Kane is a brilliant hold-up striker. He's got such a complete set of skills when it comes to being the number 9 that he is, and that's why he's the best in the world. You've got Gordon there, who's going to want to run in behind. I've also got Shaw in this team. It should be Trippier, but I was playing. I had to re-record this video because there was some sound issues, so I've already played around with some of this stuff. So let's get Trippier back in there, because I want to talk about Luke Shaw and I want to talk about Trippier coming back in the next game if he does. You've got Kane there who can bounce it off, and then you've got someone straight away who's going to want to run in behind if that second ball comes and it drops to an England shirt, whether it's Bellingham who can play that cute little pass. If Kane then bounces it off to Alexander-Arnold, you've then got someone who can spray it to Gordon in there. I do like Kane as this sort of target man in this England team. And it's why I think Tony is a better option off the bench than Watkins. Although, Aston Villa fans, I think, rightly feel a little bit aggrieved this morning because Watkins came in for a lot of stick for not really getting involved in the game against Bosnia. And when Kane does it, nobody really talks about it. But a lot of people were talking about Kane's performance last night and saying that he was quiet. Like I said, if I go back to here, which one is it? This one. 2 touches in the first half. His fewest in the first half of any start. He was really not involved, but I didn't think it hurt England. I really didn't think it hurt us. Because I think now, it doesn't matter so much if you want to use Kane as that focal point, because you've got one of the best number 10s in the world behind him. England didn't really have that before, which is why Kane was dropping deep. But Bellingham last night, Jude Bellingham rocked my world last night. He was absolutely sensational. And again, we'll come back to the goal that he scored. Saka, who I thought was great as well. Again, got a bit lucky with the cross with the deflection, but I thought he was such a threat. He was such a threat. Worked so hard as well. And I actually really think this is a great option for a sub with Bowen. I think Bowen comes on over Palmer every time on that right-hand side. And I think this is exactly why, because it's basically a mirror image of the chance that put us 1-0 up. Again, being direct down that right-hand side, cross in, run into the box, header, goal. Again, not quite the same in terms of the positioning. But what I like about Jude Bellingham is, with this chance, if that's not Kane, you can see Bellingham here. If that's not Kane at the back post, there's a very good chance that is Bellingham running in there. I talked about it in my last video, talking about England. And I talked about headed goals for Jude Bellingham. Excuse me. And I think that's why why Bowen is such a great option as well on that right-hand side as a sub. But if you go to Bellingham's heat map, everywhere last night, absolutely everywhere, picking the ball up, winning duels, winning free kicks, getting in the box, getting that goal. He was just absolutely brilliant. He was absolutely sensational, and I think is a real positive. And I think he's going to have a huge tournament for England. His comments after the game, the way he carried himself on the pitch, he's just got that aura about him. He's absolutely sensational. As was this man, Mark Gahey. That is box ticked, problem solved, at the back, sensational alongside John Stones. Not played a lot of football. I don't think he's played 90 minutes since January, maybe. Or did he? I think, did he play 90 minutes against Iceland? Maybe, but at a competitive level, he's not played 90 minutes for Crystal Palace since January. And I think the only fans really that were kind of non-surprised about how good Gahey was were Palace fans, because they've been saying this for ages. He was superb. 96% pass completion, 100% tackles won, 100% ground duels won, 2 clearances, 1 block. I think he got turned once in the channel, but I think maybe by Vlahovic. But when you've got 2 really strong, really aggressive centre forwards in Mitrovic and Vlahovic, I thought Gahey did absolutely brilliantly against them. I thought he was absolutely magnificent. And I think, like I said, I think that's box tick, problem solved. We were all a bit worried about the defence, who was going to partner Stones. I think Gahey was the obvious choice, but there were still question marks around him, and I think he's done so well. I think it was so good last night. So good. And I thought, look, there were poor bits from England last night. I didn't like the fact that we just went into our shell a little bit after the first goal, after the first half an hour, when we played really well. I thought we played really, really well in that first half an hour. I didn't like that. But I think that pragmatism gets you far in tournaments. We've won the game, we've kept a clean sheet, and we move on to Denmark, which, like I said, I think is going to be difficult. I do think it's going to be difficult with, if I just bring it back up, this midfield for Denmark. I think it's combative, I think it's hard-working, and I think Trent could get caught out, but I think I'd still go with him. One thing I wanted to talk about before we finish, or a couple of things I wanted to talk about, is the fact that we might have Luke Shaw back for the Denmark game. And I think that changes a lot. If we go back to this, Trippier last night, I thought Trippier was okay. And he actually did hold that width a lot more than what he was doing in the game against Iceland. Didn't want to come in here so much. And he did hold that width, allowed Foden to come inside a little bit more, as you can see by Foden's heat map, did get into those central areas, although a lot of it was out wide. And I think, to be fair to Foden, I think he did a lot of good defensive work as well, but I think his performance just wasn't quite there. But I think it was an off day, and I think you should keep Foden in there. But if we go back to this, and we go to a bit more of a setup with an opposition. Where are we? Go Trent in there, Walker. And you've got a bit of a low block. And you've got Kane and you've got Bellingham. I always go back with England, right? I go back to the Germany round of 16 game in the last Euros. And I think about those 2 goals that we scored. Sterling's goal and Kane's goal, pretty much identical in the way that we moved it from right to left, created that overload on that left-hand side, and there was the ball back in the box. And Luke Shaw was so key to that. I like Trippier. I think he's very solid defensively. He's super dependable. But if you get into these sort of positions where they're compact, you move the ball from right to left, like we did against Germany in that game. You got Kane that can come in here, receive it. You can play it. You can allow Kane to get back into there. These drop off. You go Bellingham to Foden. And then you've got Bellingham running into the box. You've got Kane running into the box at the back stick. These sort of drop off. Again, he watches the run of the fullback. You play it into here. The problem I've got with Trippier, and then we didn't really see this last night. It wasn't evident last night, but I think one way in which England could be so much more dangerous in terms of penetrating the box is once Shaw comes back, because you've got someone there who's so comfortable on the overlap. And it's also why I think this could be a really powerful substitution for England. Anthony Gordon or Abere Eze. If we go with Eze for now, Eze for me, I think, we didn't see him last night, but I think England almost missed that Grealish role in this squad a little bit. Someone who can carry the ball and hold it and probe. And I think Eze has got that. I think he can really do that. And I think Eze would be great in these positions because he's got the feint that he could jink inside, but he's also got the ability to go this way and play that overload. And Shaw isn't going to want to do this. He's not going to want to come back and cross with his right. Shaw is happy to let the ball run across him and get the ball in there. You've got Bellingham can attack the front post. Kane can attack the back post. This was the goal against Germany in the round of 16. I think it was Kane to Grealish, to Shaw, to Sterling, back of the net, front post. The second goal, I think it was Grealish in this position. Again, worked from right to left. Grealish in, Kane, back post header. Goal. And I think with two brilliant runners into the box like Kane and Bellingham with those headed chances that we saw last night, having Shaw back in this team and having a winger in Eze or Gordon, let's bring Gordon on, who's going to be so direct and wanting to run at the fullback and create the angle for that overload and overlap with Shaw, I think it's going to be really powerful for England. I just think with Trippier, it's really not it's really not Trippier's fault. I just think Foden doesn't really allow you to do that on that left-hand side. And I don't think you should be scared to make these changes. I think Eze and Gordon, these two, I think can be super powerful for England once Shaw comes back into the side. One thing I also wanted to finally talk about is Adam Wharton. Again, a player we didn't see last night. We saw Kobbie Mainoo. If you're worried about Trent in midfield, I still think there is value to having him in there. But I also think going to something a bit more like this in games, bringing Wharton in maybe for Walker, although I think Walker's experience is valuable. Having Rice and Wharton, having Trent as the right back, it sort of looks a little bit like this. Just as a lineup. Although, like I said, I do think another winger might get the best out of Shaw once he comes back in. I think Shaw has played as a centre-back for Man United and I think could work really well as a sort of left-sided centre-back in a back three that then allows Trent to come in here. You've got a really solid base there in Rice and Wharton. Two players that if we go back to almost the build-up and we stretch these out, we've got Gay who picks it up off the goalkeeper, even though England wanted to go long a lot last night. You've got two players that are comfortable coming in here and getting it. You can have Wharton that drops deeper, allowing Rice to go in there to play almost with Trent. And you've got a nice diamond with Bellingham at the top and then you can turn and you can play. Or this feels nice as well. Setting up as a little box in midfield. A really strong box that is for me. I just think Wharton as well just allows Rice to go a little bit more. I think it does, and I think we missed that a little bit last night. But that said, those are just some ideas at the end. Plenty of positives to take. The Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment hasn't failed yet for me. I think give it time, be patient, and I think we'll get there. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content over the Euros, more Spurs content as well, more Premier League content once the transfer window continues to hot up. Go show the Mikey Moore video some love and peace. Come on, England. Let's look forward to Denmark. Let's look forward to it because we can win that game.